I'm going to start. I'm Jeff Jacob. I'm a past president of the Watercolor Society. This is Brian Fox, and the lovely and gracious Rocky Alexander.
I love that.
She was, that movie Rocky was made about her, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 6 is really her story, so it's in production.
All right, don't video this.
Anyway, well, welcome to the critique.
Stop that.
I should have brought my paintings.
And number 1, there is no intimidation in art. And why is that? Okay, you had cavemen do paintings. Who were the first critics? Their wives. Okay, their mates. But really, nobody was there to say, oh, yes, oh, no, because they'd get their thumbs cut off and fed to dinosaurs. But in any case, so all through the ages, there have been critics, and actually the critics have slowed down movements like the Impressionistic period. I mean, it took a long time for that to take hold, and you go through the ages in each thing. Everybody wanted the tradition. I just read it, somebody posted on Facebook a fabulous article about good art versus bad art. You should check it out if you get to see it. And it's talking about the traditional classical things versus poop in a pile today, and that they pass off as art. So, you know, there are criteria for everything, and just common sense knowledge and rules. They could be pared down or expanded upon. So either way. So one of the things I want to impart to y'all is you're not under the guidance of an instructor constantly or taking courses. You do take workshops. But how does one learn to critique their own work? So there are a couple key factors in it. Number 1, get away from it. Most of us sit there too long laboring over something and on and on and on, and we can't see the trees from the forest. And you have to go out of the room. I have a bad habit of smoking, so it's a little break. And then I'm also coffee. Where's my intravenous thing for coffee? Yes, I know. Anyway, so, but I do get up often and then walk away and then look at the art as I'm approaching it from a distance and start squinting and eyeballing it and visualizing it finished. Number 1 rule in creating a painting, you should visualize in your mind's eye the end product so that you have a goal. You've set a goal, and then it's up to you to meet the levels to achieve the goal. Does that make sense to you? If you just start with a blank paper and freely throw things down, well, that's good too, but you have to step away and start putting it together. It can't be all emotional, or shouldn't be all emotional. You have to draw it in, especially if you want to get juried into a show and you want your painting viewed by the public. It's got to speak to some people, not only to you. So this is important. You're here because you would like to get juried into a show. How many have been? Yay! So, and how many haven't been? Yay! Okay, you be next. So the thing about it is, it's not, it appeals to you, it's your soul, it's your thoughts that you're sharing. But beyond that, if you want to go public with it, then you have to think of, well, what's the public looking for? What can I communicate in this that's going to touch somebody? The most incredible thing to me is I was in a show, and my painting happened to be in the first position coming in, and a daughter brought her mother in a wheelchair, and that painting was of tobacco. I forget what, but a tobacco scene, tobacco barn, harvesting, whatever. And she's taking it, and I happened to be there at the time, and there was no one else around, and the woman starts crying. And I go, oh, you know, what happened? So I go over and approach them, and I said, excuse me, I'm the artist of this painting, and I just wonder, is everything all right? And the girl says to me, no, my mother, this painting touched her. she could smell the tobacco when she looked at it. And I said, whoa. So that was my first experience about really impacting somebody. And I said, this is cool. I walked away, you know, with bad feelings and good feelings at the same time. That I upset her, but it was a happy upset. And then I was elated because I'm communicating. So if you're going to seek being juried in, think beyond you and what you want, your face that you want to put out in public. So there we go. Number 2, again, there's no one around to criticize your work constructively. So you have to learn to do that yourself. And as I said, the first step is to get away from it, look at it in a different mood, and do that. The other thing is turn it upside down. Quite often it's the design elements that make a painting, I'm going to use the word fail, in a juror's eye. And it's the graphic element. Does it hold when it's upside down? Take it to a mirror and look at the reverse. Because we have a right or left eye dominant, it'll change what you're looking at because we're used to looking at things the same way. So you always want to bring a fresh eye to it. So if you hold it to a mirror, that's a fresh eye because it's the opposite of what you're used to doing. And it'll start speaking to you. Does the color move throughout? Is it isolated? There are a lot of questions that you can ask, but just, again, try to be objective with it and think out of your box, not your own space, but as someone else. It's hard to do, but you get used to it. I was sharing with Ryan, when I got out of college, I was very lucky, and I got a job within 3 months, and I've been working ever since, except years and years and years of freelance, so, but I'm still here. And I didn't take any workshops, I didn't take any instruction after that, and I really had a self-critique. Like, I had to please clients because I did fashion illustration, commercial art, graphic art, all of that, and I said, you know, you don't want to go there and get rejected, so nothing was ever rejected. So I worked very hard and you know, stuff happens, so cool. But you have to be hard on yourself and say, do I really want this? And then the other part of it is experimentation. Don't just sit in one spot, in your comfort zone. The old saying is, when you're green, you grow, but when you're ripe, you rot. So therefore, always be eager to learn and find out something new. Just trial and error. And keep a little strip of your watercolor paper on site. Test your colors, test the intensity. Just do different things. Lay down a color, let it dry, then put another color over it, see what happens. Rather than mix, 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 and then put it on the painting, find your mixture and then put the raw elements on the painting and then blend them on the painting. All of a sudden, magic starts happening. It gets more depth, more freshness, more spontaneity. So there you go. Anybody have a particular question about any of this or your own situations?
I found that when I try to go, everybody said I had to paint bigger, so I tried to do bigger painting, and when I finish with them, there's something wrong with them, and it's always, you know, like if I make them smaller, they're better. It's like I mess up my focal point. It's
well, you have to get away.
Stuff, so
if you stood away, guess what? The painting gets smaller.
Yeah.
And then it becomes more malleable. So you develop your own work habit. Yeah. So if you're attempting bigger, make sure you use a bigger brush. If you don't use the same tool.
A lot more water. You know, you need a lot more time, of course, for drying.
Yeah.
More pigment, you know, whatever it is, whatever it takes to get there. Like I said, you got to step out of what you're comfortable with, and this is something new. When I was in college, it made you crazy. The first year, everybody had the same thing. And they would have a very analytical, tight, regimented class and learning process in the morning. Then in the afternoon, you had total wacko freedom. And then the next day, it was the same thing. You start free, and then you had to tighten up. So you're developing both the right and left side of the brain, believe it or not. And a good painting consists of freedom and focus. So there are certain, if you're undisciplined, you're just all over the place. But if you start, subjectivity and objectivity. Objectivity, it's a marriage of both of those things. Your subjectivity comes from your emotional state and your color sense and what you want to express. Your, what's the other word? Objectivity is more mechanical, it's more true, it's more rules and regulations. Like if you're painting buildings, make sure your verticals, all of them, are parallel to the side of your paper. Otherwise, tilt, and they're leaning and falling and all this. So there's a balance involved. And it just throws the viewer off. There's something wrong with that. I don't know what it is, but even if it's a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch, it bothers the psyche. So that's a rule, that if you're doing architecture, it should be parallel, unless it's a 3-point perspective and disappearing into the sky. But a lot of us don't go to New York and experience that, so in any case.
I have a question. If, for instance, I've discovered, I did this sunset scene, and you know, it was pretty bright in spots, but then when I took the photo of it and I looked at it, I felt like it looked washed out. And then when I framed it and I put it in a show, I walked up and I went, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with it. I couldn't wait to get it down and
So
take
then you
it
called
home
it a
and take it out of the
sunrise.
frame and fix it.
Well, it's
So-
also because the camera can't record fully
Yeah.
what we see in real life. It only gets like 7 stops of difference from dark to
Right.
light, and the human eye can see 15 to 16, I think, or maybe even up to 20. So what we see in real life, we can't capture on the camera, especially digital cameras.
Right.
They record this much, but we see this much. So it's kind of open to your interpretation of the photograph. I look at the photograph and I say, well, I know it was a beautiful sunset. I'm just going to kind of change it and make it look as to how I remember it.
Yeah.
You know, not
And you
necessarily
also
what I
have to
recorded.
do a lot of value studies.
Right.
What you need to do is you take your photograph, if that's how you want to paint, and you interpret your photograph 2 or 3 different times before you ever put it on a big piece of paper. I mean, I think that's very important.
Right.
And one of the easiest tricks that I've learned, if you're working from a photograph, is to have your painting or what you're doing there and take the photograph and move it in and out so it's the exact size of your painting. And then have your eyes glance back and forth. It'll tell you.
Yes.
This is part of critiquing oneself. It'll tell you what's missing. It'll tell you how intense your colors, and you're going, oh my God, and go back. Now, I teach watercolor. This is a little tip. You all teach watercolor, but this is a little tip. I paint from dark to light. Oh, could have had a V8. I pick the dark areas, not necessarily the blackest, but the richest, most intense colors, and I put down the pure pigment, and then I bring the water to it. So it stays put. It never gets muddy because it's fresh and clean and crisp, and you pull it out, and then you can influence it any which way. But a lot of people just start with layering light over light over the next shade and try to get
That'd be
down.
me.
And you get mud sometimes. You get mud, especially if you're impatient. Don't wait for it to dry. Another tip is have a hair dryer right next to your workspace.
Or go have coffee and chocolate. Play
Step
with your
away
dog.
again.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
And I work from black and white photographs. I take my color image and say, I like this image, I'm going to jack up the contrast a little bit. I print it out as a black and white. So when I'm painting from it, I'm not referencing the colors in the photograph, I'm just referencing the tones, the values.
Mhm.
And then I'm putting in the colors, and I can make the colors whatever I want them to be. So I can change the sky and all the colors completely so it doesn't look like the original photograph, because my intent isn't to make my painting look like my photograph. I want the interpretation of the photograph.
That's your subjectivity.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hardest part.
And then do you put the photograph away, which is just so hard?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'm halfway through the painting, I just throw the photograph away.
Mhm.
Like once I get the values and I start knowing what I'm doing in there, I don't need to look at it. The drawing's there. Depends on how crazy the subject
And then
is, of
you
course.
want it for some detailing,
Mhm.
the tweaking, the finesse.
Yes.
Mhm.
And I also think that it's important to point out that you're drawing, now, if you're drawing realism or photorealism, I think your drawing has to be absolutely precise. And that's because that's where I come from in my little realm. Especially if you're going to be doing any masking or any pouring with masking, which I don't necessarily do. You do a lot of that. I use more just brush washes. But your drawing has to be precise. And I have taken several workshops in the past, and they pointed out very specifically, if your drawing takes you less than a day to do, then, and you're trying to do photorealism, there's something wrong with you.
Well, this is an ambitious painting.
Well, true, but you know those paintings where you paint by number? We all did as we were little kids, and we had to use oils because it was scary. And they didn't have acrylics back then, I don't think. What we had was little blue lines that separated each little number, and you'd reference the number to a little teeny weeny thing of oil paint, and you put it. Well, there are painters out there that are in the top of their game, like the top 10
David
watercolors. Well, in the country, I'm thinking John Salmon, actually.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They draw all of that before they ever put paint to paper, and it's fascinating to see how much that teaches you about the color and the value. So I think that's very important to get in a habit of doing until you feel totally comfortable doing what Jeff is doing.
John Solomon was our juror for the 2012 show, and we spent 2 full days in this workshop doing nothing but drawing the actual image out. 2 full days, like 10 hours of just drawing this image.
I detail
crazy.
Most of my things too, except what I'm doing right now. But the thing is, I use vellum or tracing paper, and I do my series of sketches, and then I start assembling it. And then I do a master where I'll transfer them or redraw over them. And then I'll finally put it on my watercolor paper, because if I did all that drawing, unless it's a simple object,
right?
Unless you're getting too much of the carbon, the
the graphite.
The graphite.
Yeah,
thank you.
graphite
That's the
on
word. Used to be carbon, now it's graphite. Anyway, over that, and then the water won't adhere to it. But yes, meticulous things, and people know me for extreme detail, but it's in the drawing. And because I go through those steps each time, mentally I start painting, even though I'm still sketching in black and white, because as Rocky pointed out, you realize the color, the value, the nuance of something going on. And you come equipped when you finally dip that brush in the water. You have a game plan because you're aware of so much. So don't go, oh, I have to draw it. Give me a break. If you're not painting, you should be sketching.
Absolutely. And there's another thing too, is if you're doing little tiny vignettes, it's possible to work your color scheme, your drawing, everything in little tiny pieces somewhere that's accessible to when you are doing your big painting. You have those little bits that are ready there. You've tested your color. I always have part of the piece of paper works for me, because I usually tape off what I'm going to do for a bigger painting. And those little pieces are right over here. I'm sketching, I'm drawing, I'm dabbing the paint on it.
It's the formula.
And then if you work wet into wet, because I know Ryan works wet into wet, a lot of times it's nice to have a piece of your paper that's wet. Dab your paint onto the wet paper as well as onto the dry paper. You're going to see a total difference because it's going to dry differently. So
you do know that paint dries lighter especially with the water and the amount of water.
And yet, Paul Jackson will say it doesn't do that. He
Well,
will say that, and what he says is,
I've spent time with Paul Jackson.
I know, but it's amazing because if your paint is dark enough, if it's dry enough, in other words, I call it temperature, but it's not. It's the amount of moisture in the paint. If the paint is dry enough, it's not gonna fade.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very scary to paint like that
Yeah.
because it's guessing then.
But the biggest lesson is trial and error.
Trial and error,
And
absolutely.
the thing is, until you reach that professional level where you can predict everything about your painting and every step of the way and every process, it's still trial and error. And you should welcome it with open arms because that's the learning process. We learn more from our mistakes than from our victories.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, Jeff, instead of doing this right now on yours, maybe we should take some, because
Yeah.
we're gonna run out of time.
Yeah.
And so.
Art. Who's got art?
First,
Take your time.
I thought we would do it in order,
Oh,
and since you're first, so we're gonna ignore you.
I'm a free spirit.
Kathy Bovar didn't come with hers, is, Carol Bryant's not here either. Okay. Peggy is not here. And, oh, they're all at the board meeting. Cynthia?
I'm here.
Okay, you get to be first then.
This is a smashing success.
And I wanted to say something about, going back to the drawing too, like if you're going to do a photorealistic drawing, it just has to be consistent. Like there are times when I'll spend 2 days drawing out my photograph, then there are other times where I spend 10 minutes. I don't want it to be photorealistic, I just do it really loose, but it's consistent. I'm not going to have one portion of it where it's super, super tight. I make it all pretty loose. Otherwise, if you have one area where it's super, super tight, it's a bullseye for the eye. And if that's what you want, that's okay. But if it isn't what you want, you have to be aware of that. Otherwise, the person's going to look just at that really tight building you drew. If everything else is super loose, it just doesn't look right.
I'm gonna get that.
Let's see, I gotta.
Moi? Who?
I want to look at it and analyze for a second.
Okay.
Jeff, turn it around a couple of times. Just do the upside down thing and,
And
Alright.
squint.
okay, upside down.
Are you seeing anything?
It's interesting. Okay, go one more, regular. Just put it right side up.
I'm going north, south, east, west, though.
Thank you. Well, I don't do that. Tell us what you were trying to do first.
You mean my.
What is your goal?
My goal.
Yes. What is your inspiration, your goal in painting?
Well, first of all, the photograph without the goat, I loved. I loved that, the way that fence was, the way it went back and forth. And just the scene, the landscape as a whole. But I knew it needed more, I needed to put something in it to make it more interesting.
A focal point.
A focal point. So that's when I went to the goat, and then the goat's in the field in the back, and of course the barn was intended to be in there. That was in the landscape. So my intent, was to portray that landscape more. That's what I really love, but the goat gets all the attention. And then I got into the goat more, then I got into, well, this will be about the goat. That's how my mind process.
Well, it's quite lovely.
Thank you.
And your use of color and the technique is quite nice. So it says about your style. Part of the issue with it that would improve it, let's not call it an issue, we'll call it an improvement, is this area of the painting dominates, and it's almost split down the middle, and there's nothing here, even though that was what you wanted to achieve, the wiggly fence. So therefore, more intensity in here, more of the plane change, get that fence deeper, and where it's light brighter, not necessarily brighter than it is, but darker there, so that your eye starts flowing into that. The other thing is that if the goat was reversed and facing in, it would have held. because this is very busy,
Uh-huh.
and he is the focal point and dominant because of the color value, and then bland.
So I should blend like the fence part in with the goat?
Okay, I would go darker here
Mhm.
in your negative spaces, really
Really?
darker.
That's,
And I
Like-
would say maybe put up a few darks down in here too, because that's going to lead your eye back this way in addition.
okay. So
And the
it's-
shadowing under the goat, stronger, all this stronger, because the goat is almost integrating with the fence and the weeds.
Mhm.
I know it's set back a little, but because of the value, it's hard to tell. But if you marry these together
Mhm.
and then extend some of the darks out and then really pick up the shadows on the fences stronger,
Okay.
there's going to be more of a continuity.
I get
But
you.
number one, if the goat was flopped looking into the picture, because he's ready to leave and he's left all that behind, so we don't really care about
Care
that.
about that, right.
So actually, this painting would be better,
Uh-huh. I get you. Yeah, you're right.
the half of it. So,
And can I offer another
Yeah.
thing? Okay, the thing that that I focus on, maybe because of my background in architecture,
Uh-huh.
is perspective.
Uh-huh.
And I think you've done a fabulous job of getting the goats and your building and everything are way back in the distance.
Uh-huh.
You've done a really good job of your heads, are all in the same position, even though your feet are coming way down, so you've done a really good job of that. But this part of the fence, I don't think would have been curved down. I think this fence would have been more like this or even like this.
I just made
Because
that
it's,
up. I mean,
I can tell.
Yeah.
unless there's a cliff there and the goat's gonna
Exactly.
go over it.
Oh.
And Ryan pointed out a good thing of having some more grasses here, just to get this
Just a little bit of
dark,
center, maybe.
and having a Z in your paintings is very effective for a judge,
Oh, okay.
and I think, and then having some dark right back in there would have been good, and the second thing I would point out is what Jeff said, if your goat was facing, even if his face was that way,
Looking over the
Looking
shoulder.
over his shoulder.
and it's really easy to do on most copy machines. Take your image and reverse it so that your goat, you can place the goat. But to me, this is the most
Obvious.
to me, it's the most obvious issue.
It should be going, that
Well, I
board
think,
should be going upward.
well, your fence is coming
Right.
like this,
Right.
okay?
And if you had put the angle either straight across or slightly
Slightly
out,
up.
Slightly
it
up.
would put the goat in perspective with it, because
And-
right now he's added
Right.
on.
And the other thing is, the fence is then facing or pointing to the goat.
Yeah. Oh, well, right, the arrow would be going
Right.
that way.
But
Uh-huh.
rendered beautifully,
Thank you.
And-
rendered beautifully.
If you go to Photoshop or Photoshop Express, there's a thing in there that you can flip your painting.
Mhm.
Oh, really?
And I do that, like, I did 2 giraffes, and the one that was gonna be the focal point was actually behind the one
Mhm.
that was in the, and so I flipped them so that the one that was the focal was on, on
side you
this side where
prefer.
your eye
Right.
followed him, but it's a real simple.
Yeah,
it's
Office
a
Depot
free
does
app.
that too, like,
I
Yes.
did Photoshop
Yeah.
Express,
Okay.
and it flips my paintings, and I've done that, I found that it has helped me.
And I was going to say the same thing, that actually I don't mind the fence at all, because this is kind of a weird angle. It just works for me. I think
Yeah.
it's okay, but and of course it's different people looking at different paintings. The one thing I was going to suggest is this horizon line.
Uh-huh.
It pretty much runs straight to the ear.
Oh, it does.
So, maybe just move that a little bit, just to add a
Lower.
little bit more, just a little bit lower.
Mhm.
Or if the head was moved a little bit, that would make it not such a straight line cutting across.
Should that be maybe more of an angle, you think, to get
Well,
more of that?
this could just be
zigzag?
lower, or maybe the ear could be just changed a little bit. We could almost even magic
Yeah,
eraser
oh, the
that
ear
out a
could-
little bit if you
Oh,
want to.
you're saying to the point of the ear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That-
it
that
runs
is- that
straight
is
to
a-
The
the
main horizon, the
Right.
whole thing is on
And that's
the
a
end.
real no-no for judges, because
Yes.
they look at that tension point, or the tangent point.
Tangent.
Yeah,
right.
but I mean, but the use of color throughout the piece, I think
Beautiful.
you did a very good job. And,
Well, I
you know, it's
really
consistent.
got carried away with that. I just love my God, you know, got carried away and love it. But I got carried away with my
And the best suggestion you can make, or I can make, is do it again.
Do it again.
With this new knowledge,
Right.
do it again, and then you'll say, aha, problem solved. This is
Right.
what I was after.
Right, yeah.
Jeff?
That.
Okay.
that-
All right, how much, it rained last week, didn't it? And I live at the coast.
Oh, dear.
And it rained and rained and rained. You can put that up.
That's all right.
Oh,
Did
you
it-
were holding it for half of it, yeah.
Did you enter this in the show? Or
I
try to-
did, I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
It's so hard to talk about, you know, why a judge did or didn't, and we can't obviously
Well,
Come on
see
in.
into Baker's mind.
See
but-
how that painting holds.
That holds very well.
Don't talk about you.
Oh, what were you gonna say?
I'm trying to read your mind. It's like, I can't read your mind. It's good to see it.
And then take that little part of
Now-
the barn and your fence, make it another
That's on the
thing.
big
Oh,
one.
good.
And make it your Christmas cards.
Oh, thank you. It
Now
wasn't
that
all
Linda
rain.
Baker's here, I'm going to say something, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, those of you that are wondering, well, why didn't this piece get into the show? It has, this is my theory, it has to do with the juror ate for lunch. Certain criteria stay the same, but moods change. And really, it's timing and their aura and how they feel about things at that moment, you know, unless you're very rigid. But, you know,
May I comment on that?
pardon?
May I comment on that?
Give her some
May I
chocolate.
comment on that? I always tell everybody, if you got in, congratulations. If you didn't, you had a bad juror.
But it's true, you know, it's all subjectivity versus objectivity, so. And like I said before, it's a balance of combining those two things.
Okay, next, let's,
We've got to move around, then
Yeah,
we'll
we
get
do.
to your
And then
second
we'll
one.
come back.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you ready?
So much.
All right.
Like,
Let's.
Who's the artist here?
Let's see. I am. Okay, good. All right.
That's a print, and I
Excuse me.
apologize, the painting got trapped in the
Right, I
show
heard.
in Wilmington.
I heard.
Okay. So the color isn't exact,
Is this more washed out than?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, because that's the first thing we would have said. A little more intensity, a little more
Look at it.
commitment.
Sideways.
Upside down.
Are you
Does
seeing-
anybody paint upside down? I mean, not like Batman, but.
I draw upside down too.
I think it helps remove the subject from your mind. You're thinking more of just shapes and values and tones. I do it quite a bit at my house just because of space, because I just don't have much space on my table. So I'll move around the table and paint on the opposite side.
Okay, overall, now this is just an off-the-wall critique. If you want to know how to improve a painting versus what's wrong with it, well, there's nothing wrong with it. It's really quite lovely, I think. And it's designed well. The graphics on it are together, they're in place, there's a balance, an asymmetrical balance about it. So all the stuff is happening. What did you want to communicate in it?
Just the beauty of underwater.
Okay. Well, you have the turtles, which is the focal point. They're not interconnected.
Do you want me to hold that up? Can you guys all see it okay?
Yeah, they're a little isolated from each other, which is okay. But my suggestion would be to make the turtles bigger. So that's a little more interaction because
Yeah,
they
you can see the
become,
light hits
again,
it.
isolated. Instead of your eye holding everything together, the light is doing that, but it doesn't have the oomph. So it just could be a matter of size. Oh, I've heard that before. Oh, I didn't say that. Anyway, yeah. And again, in order to do that, you could have brought a little more color on the turtles to make them appear larger, but actually, technically, I would suggest they be bigger in the painting. And a little closer, well, with one plane touching the other plane. An overlap.
I'm not sure.
So
I
then it
understand.
unifies them psychologically. They're isolated right now. Close the gap in here. Bring this one forward.
Oh, okay. Those are different.
Yeah, yeah.
They wouldn't have to necessarily touch, but just
No,
not be
yeah,
so
not
far
touch,
apart.
but even visually, if one beak went over the other head slightly, but it's not necessary. But if you brought that one forward, it kind of psychologically pulls it together. It's very subtle because it's a wonderful painting. It's quite lovely. Your technique is beautiful. There's a lot of technique in there.
The colors are well done.
Hmm. There's harmony, balance.
And the texture.
If we could do one other thing. Because of the foliage, I would say you have two separate paintings because you've got two separate kinds of foliage. And that would help unify too, I think.
If it had been the same.
If you, well, no, if you had added some of the tall skinny ones over here.
Yeah.
And then I agree with Jeff that, I'm not good at this. I would agree with Jeff that if you had more color in the turtles and just have some tweaks of red-orange, because the red-orange is gonna contrast a little bit more with the blue-green. And then I always figure that if you've got a little bit more color, but, you know.
And ladies and gentlemen,
Gentleman.
if you are doing, color theory, bone up on it, learn it, try it, because exactly what Rocky said is that would have given it pop. It would have given the turtles more presence. Subtle, but oomph. And color theory is an important part, because if you want your purple to look purplier, get your yellow orange next to it. It'll make it sing. Why do red roses look so grand? You take it and put it on gray, but you put it next to the green, they're opposites, and it's like jump. Why does Easter look cool, purple and yellow? And et cetera, et cetera. Why does Howard Johnson's look great, orange and blue?
Where does this come from?
The fin, the other fin.
What? Oh, that's a fin.
Yeah.
Oh, I apologize. I'm
See,
sorry.
it's the color of that, and it should have
Yeah, and it looks like a piece of grass
changed
that doesn't
its
have a
life a
bottom.
little bit.
And I would almost say too a cropping of take out a little bit at the bottom, a little bit at the top. And you would have more of a horizontal kind of unusual aspect ratio, which sometimes people have a tendency to like more than just the standard aspect ratio for normal watercolor paper.
And
Especially jurors, I've heard.
you have
And
a
then you
lot
can sell
of
it too.
voids here. And even though they're beautifully handled, that's what's making the turtles look not important. There's so much space around it, so.
How big was this, the original?
Same size.
Same size? Okay. Yeah, wonderful use of texture. I love that.
Mhm.
Colors are
Yeah,
nice.
your technique is.
Very nice.
It goes back to, in simplest terms, composition.
All right,
You're gonna do that.
next.
And let me say, composition is the biggest downfall of most paintings.
All of us. Okay, let's see. We're trying to go in.
You're asking me without glasses. I had cataract surgery, now I can't see up close.
Did Beth get here? Beth Vale? Okay.
Well, raise your hands who has
Yeah,
paintings.
let's do that.
Okay.
Oh,
so
look,
we have-
Jan was here first, or well, close to it, so.
Okay,
Well,
it was pouring down when I was ready to leave, and I didn't bring the actual painting because it didn't feel safe. I do have on an iPad, if it can be seen well
Okay.
enough.
Now the visual aids come in handy.
Yeah, now we took down all the
There we
digital
go.
stuff.
And
Okay.
that is, I
okay, well,
don't know if you can see it.
Okay, I'm gonna walk around with it.
Okay. It's-
Okay, it is lovely. The
it's-
design element is good.
It's, okay, and again,
Oh,
I'm,
okay.
there we go. Can pop. No, I didn't get a chance because it was nonstop. was interested actually I was interested in the question of how you paint African American hair without making it look correct, particularly the braids, without painting all the braids. And this is a young woman at IHOP in Ashboro, a woman who had great dignity, and she had these beautiful braids up there. And so that's what I painted.
Do you know the painter Dean Mitchell?
Yes.
Dean does an amazing job of getting detail without actually putting the detail in.
Yeah, he does.
And if you take a look at his work and just kind of analyze how he did it, it's amazingly detailed, but like I said, it's almost like abstract in a way, but you step back a few feet, you know exactly what he's painting.
Would you like me to get it back? Oh, you got it.
Okay, yeah. No, I have one of these, so I know how to do it.
You
Okay.
want me to hold it?
Yeah.
All right.
You want me to talk?
Yes, please. Anyway.
Okay, you have a duochrome, what I call a duochrome, two basic colors in it. And even though you used more, it boils down to two basics. Something needs to dominate. I would bring more color into her shirt because she's fading totally into the background. And she's a person, a whole being, and all the emphasis is just on her hair and her face. And it's like a headless horseman floating in the sea of neutral. So number one, to get her on the page and integrating with the painting, I would pull out the blues and keep some of the warms in the blue as well and get it on there. It'll give her a little more dimensionality. Okay, I do a lot of portraits. Her eye is too far back.
She has very widespread eyes.
Yeah.
Very specifically, this particular woman.
And then you have to be extremely careful. And the biggest tip I can tell you is do it upside down. And really, because then you're not, when you turn something upside down, you're no longer assuming. You're actually looking and seeing. So assuming versus seeing are two different things. And in this case, a portrait, you want to nail the likeness. And even though you see the big white of the eye, it's not as big if you looked at it from a different point of view.
Okay.
So I would reanalyze it. The other part is I would bring just a little more shadow into her. You have an illumination here. So therefore, on this contour, when you do a ball and a head is a ball, there are 5 points of light. The highlight, the transitional light, the actual color, the shadow color, and then the reflected light. So that gives the dimensionality. And she's only got a highlight and then all neutral. It needs to get dark right along that trace. Look at the photo and analyze it more critically. And then you could build a little more contour in there, because quite frankly, she's absolutely flat from that. Oh, good. She's flat from that forward, even though you've worked in the blush and whatnot.
She's not flat. Oh, sorry.
Her face.
Oh,
Anyway, so you see what I'm saying. Okay, so to make this painting better, I like the presentation, I like the starkness. She's also dead center. I would move her just a little more to the left. I mean, to the left. Is that helpful?
Yes, it's
Okay.
very helpful. Thank you.
Ryan?
And I would say the big white horizontal stripe going across the center there, tap that down a little bit by making the blue maybe of the shirt a little stronger on her left side, so that it's not such a design element going straight across.
Yeah, and when you look at the light tracing through her, it should follow the same path.
Okay.
Because it's the same lighting on the figure, just don't put
The
another
light
light.
comes from behind her braids. She's sitting in front of the glass doors. So the light is coming from the doors behind.
Now, if this is something you want to pursue, the portraits, we had to do this after school, after college, and all this. And it's to create a swipe file. And it's to help you identify who you are. And what you do is you go through magazines and all this, and you tear out the sheets that appeal to you for whatever reason, and you put them in a file. And it could be furniture, it could be people, it could be paintings, it could be scenes, it could be ads, it could be earrings. What? Oh, hurry up?
No, jewelry.
Oh, jewelry, okay. And then go back 2 weeks later or a month later and edit it, because your moods change. But then all of a sudden, after you develop this over a period of months, you'll start seeing your own sense of color, a sense of design, a sense of subject matter, etc. You'll find some common denominators, and that's helping identify who you are, instead of just, I used to be like, oh, what am I going to paint next? Years ago, like, oh my God, I need inspiration. What am I going to paint next? Now, I don't have enough time to do the 3,742 paintings I have planned. You know, everything inspires you, and you go. So get over the hump and do it. Put on your Nikes and do it. Next work of ours.
Yes,
Well, Jan, it was worth it.
absolutely. No, go ahead.
300 pounds.
Mm.
Okay, I'm going to just cut to the chase. Good design. Well balanced. Losing the focal point. There is so much background and color and vivacity, that's vivaciousness, but used as a something.
Adjective.
Yeah, vivacity, that this is lost. It's melting away right into the other stuff. These colors should be popping, you know, really standing out. Then it could handle all that background. He's here, and the proportion of these flowers, I don't know what they are. What are they? Huh?
The big sunflowers.
Oh, big sunflowers. Okay. Well, they need bigger centers to say sunflower. Fewer petals, bigger centers. And I would almost go to black in them. You have no depth in here. You have dark colors, but you need to create super blue, black, green at the bottom of these bases and in between here and all this to start making them move forward. Because right now they're, oh, I'm colorful, but I'm afraid to speak. Okay?
I think it needs more darks and
And you're afeared of it.
No, I'm not. This is the third one I've done with exactly the same photograph that I took. But
All right.
I'm not getting the contrast that I want.
Okay, one of the things you might want to do is analyze your photograph and analyze what you want to stand out here and mask it off. And then do all your background and everything else. And then you'll have the whites and the pures to put down the pure color, because frankly, they muddied over. And I can feel no, I can't feel texture, but they're not fresh anymore. It's like a truck went by and sprayed mud on it, you know, dirty water. And they need to have the freshness. So if you're into masking, you can do that with the masking, or I like to use the artist tapes and block out a whole area, then I graze it around it for my edge. Then when I take it off, I have a nice, when I do reverse palms, I did a rainbow sky, or not rainbow, but yeah, brilliant, but then the palm leaves had to be lighter and darker than the background. So I had to do the background first, which I usually don't do till last. And it worked, because I could have lighter fronds against the darker background, et cetera, et cetera. But you have to talk to yourself and say, well, what do I want to achieve in this? And you've achieved it, but it's overstated. It's like the sun's going down, and now it's in shadow. Now that's another thing that you could do. You can cause this umbrella to heavily shadow everything. I mean, really dramatically. And then it would be a different type of statement.
I have only one. I love your background. I love it. Okay,
I know.
It hits me right here. But right here, this line is my eye goes right to it because it's, I don't know, to me it looks like you narrowed it here. I'm not sure, but I bet you if you turn it upside down, it might look a little off. Does that, and it's the 3 lines that are parallel, or maybe they're supposed to be?
Well, you know, I had an issue with the background because the background's just cars and street things, so I made up the background.
The background is gorgeous, to me, okay?
And so I was trying to put maybe door, window, but it just didn't, it's just not right.
In this case, less
Take it
is
off.
more. If you left it alone, then you would have more strength in the middle.
Or a soft edge, maybe even. Okay. Now the other question I had was 2 things. Is your light source right there?
The light's coming from the left and
Going
to the
right. You've got long shadows though here. So is your light way down? And how much?
Well, that was another thing I'm making because they weren't in the photograph. So the photograph I used was a flower vendor that I took a picture of in DC. The lighting wasn't good, and it was actually not a great photograph. So a lot of this I just made up, and I know the shadows are not right in it, and they also don't match, which has bothered me. And I'm going to do this
you ever draw
again,
arrows?
but I wanted to hear the critique before I started.
Do you ever draw arrows on your work? Like when I'm doing plein air painting, or sometimes the photograph is really, you don't know where the sun is.
Yeah.
I just draw an arrow and say all the light's coming from this direction.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be
Good
consistent
idea.
from
Exactly
that arrow
right.
the entire time, especially plein air painting, because the light changes on you. You get a day like this, you're like, well, I'm just going to invent it and make it up, but I have to keep it consistent in the painting, otherwise it just doesn't
That
render.
makes sense.
And then the other one thing is, I think you've almost, I want to say graphic. It's almost a graphic painting rather than a painterly painting. Okay, and now, having said that, one of the things that sometimes is very helpful, and I might get shot out of the sky here, but if you've ever wanted to kind of save something like, I would try it before you start another painting. Take either magenta, a transparent magenta, or transparent alizarin crimson, of course. And then just map out all your shadows and then paint a full glaze of alizarin crimson or magenta over the whole top of everything that's in shadow. And it's very unusual. And it might help you, okay? But
Now, do you pour that or just?
well, I don't pour it because I'm not good at pouring. I have a great big Jack Richardson brush that I use, and I love that. Or Chief Joe's great big brush works really, really well for something like that. And mix up a ton and mix it very pale, like the consistency of maybe 1% milk or 2% milk. And sometimes that's really fun thing to do, and then your whites will pop out, or anything that's not in shadow will pop out.
So that's over top what she's already done, over top of it.
Oh yeah. Scary. But don't be afraid, it's just a piece of paper and it only costs you $6.
I did the same
I
thing.
want to say,
You know?
I'm drawn to this area because this is the purest white in the piece besides the dotted borders. And I was looking at it, and if you take apart, you can almost crop it there.
Oh yeah, but you lose this beautiful
You
background.
did, but it's like, it is a beautiful background, but I'm drawn to this
You're drawn
person
to that.
sitting there. I'm thinking, well, what's going on with them? Are they listening to music? Are they talking on the phone? Are they
Yeah, and is that your focal point?
Was he nursing a hangover?
Yeah, I don't know. So I'm drawn to that person.
He was actually talking on the phone, but I wanted it to look like he was just kind of bored with the whole thing. So that's why I had the lettering up at the top, and it's
Teenagers.
it's the bored flowers, but in French.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
One of the things.
Oh, that's cute.
The initial statement of objectivity versus subjectivity. You have a lot of subjectivity, and then when you go to attach the shadows, objectivity. And as Ryan pointed out, when I'm teaching landscapes or something, or whatever, where there's a lot of single source light, like the sun, I tell them put a little circle up in the corner of the painting, and everything is going to be enveloped by that light. So, and you got to figure out if it's forward or rear or just on the side, etc. So,
But it's very pretty. I mean, you'll probably sell it.
and again, technique and
I'm going to do it again, but before I do it again, I need it, because I'm just not happy with it.
So you got some pieces.
So that all helps.
And you have to be happy, because why bother painting? You know? Okay. Who's next?
I'm sorry to be late. I
Don't.
got halfway here and realized I had forgotten my wallet. I was driving illegally, so.
Oh my goodness, you were coming from Pittsburgh?
Yeah. That was a bummer.
It's hard not to have.
okay, you missed a lot of the beginning and opening remarks. So,
Yeah.
This is Beth.
Sorry.
hi Beth.
I'm Beth. Nice to meet you.
I'm not. No, I'm happy to meet you too, but I'm not Beth. Okay, it's composition. And it's
center.
almost in the middle, and the painting's cut in half. This is a painting. That's a painting. That's not necessary. Or if it elevated to integrate. Because you have a plane, a plane, a plane, a plane, a plane, a plane.
The plane, the plane.
The plane, boss, look at the plane. And things need to integrate, and they're not integrating. The closest you get is if one of these sheep was behind the fence, and that integrated. But if these in the foreground, there were some in a bigger proportion that did it. So basically, you have to look and check your composition. And, right, okay, I'll shut up. Ryan is thinking.
I was gonna say I like your greens because
Very good
it's
job.
not pure tube green, which I can't stand. There's only like probably two or three, probably I think two tube greens I think are worth anything. Everything else is just not real green. So the fact that you mix some reds into it, I do like your greens and your use of color. It just kind of integrating all the composition in with it, I think is will help improve a whole lot if you do that.
So this particular painting, I had done this little demonstration with this little piece at the bottom and thought I liked it, so I tried to then incorporate another photo, so it kind of, I guess, turned into two pieces. But
Yeah, it just had to say more with it's
Composition. And I think a lot of times you can solve that by turning your value study or your sketches that you do and turn them upside down, look at it in the mirror like Jeff was saying earlier. You can point out, you would have seen this fence immediately, and this is dead center. And I don't know how Linda feels, but to me that's a dead giveaway. And I like the idea that Jeff suggested, or was it Ryan? You know, you could cut it off. This is lovely. Okay?
And then bring a little more attention to the fence.
Yeah.
If you were to cut it off.
Yeah, I think, and some shadows. There is nothing more beautiful than how some people are able to render their shadows from a fence or from the trees, or bring something from outside and bring it into the painting. The shadows just, you know, they kind of make you feel good or bad, whatever, you know, badly, goodly, no, okay.
Make you feel, yeah.
I mean, you get an emotional response to shadows a lot of time. But I agree with you with your greens, are beautiful. You probably have Gene Dobie's book on,
And also symmetry with the fence posts. Even though that's probably what it looked like in real life, if you just move like one fence post closer to the other one, just so there's not symmetry throughout the entire thing, it just makes a more interesting painting instead of having everything equally spaced. So just play with that a little bit, or having one of these maybe leaning a little bit more to the side than the other one, just to play with that a little bit, just to keep the eye engaged with the painting.
Right, or even one post knocked over,
yeah.
so that it goes down and then raises up again.
And then I have a question about a lot of shows, it's really tough to get in with black matting. And what was your thought? I mean, what were you trying to do with the black mat?
Just to not draw your eye off of the picture to the mat, to kind of keep it in with the painting being lighter than the mat.
Okay, when you're thinking of entering a show, neutral, light-colored mat, simplest of all frames. And it's because the jurors don't want to be distracted by color. Am I right? Elaborate framing.
She's in there.
And that,
Going
because
on.
they want to look at the art itself. So when you're getting something framed, make a decision. Is this for me in my house? Or is this for Aunt Tilly? Or my niece? Or, you know, whatever. Or do I want to go into a competition with it? So you treat it that way from the get-go. This is for that. And I like the fact that you tipped it. It always separates it. But the one other thing I'm looking more, you've got little green shadows under the sheep because of all this yellow-green. Purple shadow, blue-violet. And those sheep are going to, because they're melting away. Hello.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
kind of do.
I think it's a wonderful decorating piece. You know, if I had money, I'd buy it just for fun. Because, you know, it's. I bet you could sell it at a show in an outdoor festival. You know.
Yeah, I never intended this one to go into a show because I knew it had issues, so that's why I wanted to hear your critiques on what would make it have less issues. And I just, obviously, I guess, kind of just threw the fence in there. There was no, you know, fence there, but I like the suggestions of staggering it, leaning it over. Who cares if the sheep would escape? My mind says they would get out, but it doesn't matter.
But the thing is, you put the fence in, but it's not significant enough.
Yes.
It's not the focal point, even though it's trying to be. And really, it's the graphic breakdown of all these planes,
That's
alike shapes. So something needed to.
You did a very nice job too with the trees, with
Yeah, the
indicating
trees are
branches,
lovely.
with enough branches but not too much.
and your shadows.
And the fact that you
underneath.
used so many
the
greens.
darks underneath.
I like your trees.
So it'll be interesting
trees are better
to
than
see.
mine.
Okay, where are
They
we?
look good.
Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Can I ask a question right quick? You said there were only 2 greens that you would consider using. What are those 2 greens?
They're both sap greens. One's a Daniel Smith, and that's a mixture of 2 different pigments. And then there's another one, I want to say a Holbein. And that one also, and I can't think of the name of it right now, but it's also a mixture of 2 pigments. And I always add red to it. So I always put a little bit of red into it, and otherwise it just looks too green. Because, you know, like Windsor green is just not a green you're going to see on a tree. You're going to see it on a fake, you know, flower in your grandmother's house. But so always put some red
That's
into it.
been there
just
for a
makes-
few years.
or 3 decades.
And you can always add orange.
Mm-hmm.
Paranone orange is a beautiful color, and mixing it with your sap, you get green gold, and mixing it with, you can mix it with your phthalo, and you get some very rich, deep greens. So, I mean, you know, I think you can work with that.
Yeah,
Try
but-
different things out. Try a magenta mix with your green. You get a real muddy, dark, you know. So, you know, play.
And
That's why you have those sheets of paper with all that
One of the
stuff
simplest
on it,
form is
okay?
if you take your sap green, or even permanent green, which is St. Patrick's Day,
It's
if you
awful.
add burnt umber and ultramarine, you bring it down, you bring it down, you bring it down to really deep, rich color. Now, the more blue in it, the more dominant that's going to cool. The more brown in it, it's going to stay warm, but
Mhm.
be deep and earthy, olivey.
Yeah.
So use that as a base, but never use it straight or minimally.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's good. All right, should we start over? Does anybody else that hasn't done it?
I do this.
Let's,
Fortune to the bold.
There's two bigger paintings in here.
Okay. Well, come up
Okay.
and then you can tell us what's what.
I just brought, you said you could bring two, so I brought two larger
Okay.
paintings. These are both plein air.
Uh-huh, good.
let's do one at a time and then we'll start from where we
Which one?
started at the beginning.
Pick one.
Bottom one.
Okay.
Okay, there's a better overall ratio of everything in this scene. You have a foreground, and
Can everybody see that?
they're like Smoky Mountains. Are they Smoky Mountains?
No, they're overseas, in Turkey.
Oh, okay. Well, they smoke in Turkey.
Yeah, they do smoke.
Turkish tobacco, please. Okay. I
What was
like
your goal?
everything about it.
Yeah. What about your photograph or about, this is plein
That's
air?
plein air.
What about that scene, gave you a rush?
That was, I could see that from my window where I live. It changed every day.
Mm-hmm.
This was the spring when it was really green because it gets brown over there in the summer. But then it looked like the Blue Ridge to me, and it reminded me of home.
What I like about it is it's atmospheric. I like to use that word. You sense being there. You sense what it really is. It's just not a representation. It is it. And that's because of the unusual use of the darks in the middle. And I commend you for that because I think that's powerful. And considering the fact that it's plein air, there's not much more you could improve on. I love this coming in, and you need more of that in here. This is the foreground. You don't want to overwork, but it does need a little more weight in this warmer color because it is a foreground, so you're able to see more colors. But don't overstate it, but bring it out a little, what's right in your foreground. It's trial and error.
My only comment would be the stream or whatever it is coming down through the middle. If you could have offset that just a little bit more, it's
It's kind of centered too much.
it's like, ooh, in your face,
But I like it because it's like,
Oh.
never mind. Sorry.
And
Everybody's got one.
The colors give you a really good sense of the
And he was our president.
of depth. I would love to see a little bit more of the lost and found edges up in here, perhaps, can indicate what's forward, what's closer and further back, because this does seem to be, for me, a rather strong line going across. And then, yeah, maybe a few specks of detail in here, perhaps. But it does have a lot of atmosphere, and I do like the colors. And plein air is so difficult.
Yes, it
I
is.
keep trying and trying, and just not doing well.
Oh, yeah, you who just
Yeah.
won. Stop it.
Not this year. But no,
I did.
it's a very nice piece.
Yeah, right.
I was waiting for you to hit the green.
The green?
No, the greens are great.
I don't mind the green.
See, and the reason is because you've integrated that green but with other values
Mhm.
in the darks.
Mhm.
So, next. Nice,
There's
nice.
another.
Good job, Miss Kitty.
Yeah.
Thank you. There's
Nice.
another one up there.
Another plein air. Again,
Yeah, another
difficult.
plein- That's was the sea there.
This is still turkey?
It's still Turkey.
They're not. Are they jiving in the water? No. Jive turkey.
Is the water that blue?
Oh, she's
Oh,
giant.
yeah.
Okay.
It's
It's
really
raining.
is.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, he's a good model.
So
Vanna.
we got in a little bit.
Vanna, twist your letter. Anyway, this value is the same as that value, is the same as that value, and then finally you depart. You need to shadow the lower portion to create that range. and the depth. You need a little orange on that to make it come forward even more. It's like, really, why did I bother putting that in? Because it's, pardon my word, ditzy, 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 ditzy. And something should dominate and hold it together, but they're almost lollipop isolated. So mesh them more and bring out a little more color, but mainly, say, a blue-violet shadow moving into a red-violet to get some haze and distance on this one. And then also you could put a little streak of an orange, watered down here to warm this cove up, and this way you'll get more depth. This part is absolutely lovely back here. And one of the things here, be careful of your strokes, keep them all horizontal. Now they're coming into the shoulder, but they're turning, but you have a few splotches that if you put some of these values across here, it would bring the eye to it. Even, I know it's hard to do in plein air because you're wet and fast and everything, but good job.
Composition, I like how you don't see the top of this mountain. If you didn't have this here, the piece would fall apart. But the fact that you do, this kind of leads your eye throughout the piece a lot more than if you just cropped it there. So you did a good job with the composition of that. I do like that.
And the fact that you did that, it's compelling because the water seems to be swirling. And it really pulls your eye around the whole thing.
Okay, we need to hurry.
Yeah.
You were first, right?
I was first.
All right, did you have the second one?
I do have a second one.
Well, bring it up here, lady.
I kind of grabbed it at the last minute, I found what you had, and it's one that,
Oh, lovely.
Oh, I remember seeing this. Did you have this on Facebook?
did I came, yes, I did.
I think I remember that.
That is my grandmother, and I found the photograph in an envelope with a letter. And she loved to work in the garden, and that's how I remember her, as being having an old apron on. But she also was president of some ladies group, and she was very dignified too. So I didn't see the side of her very much.
So she's also going to church, so.
Well, I think she came home from a ladies meeting back in the 40s, and I wanted, of course it was of my grandmother, and I got into her, and then I needed to put a background in, but I realized one thing, that the photograph was a touched up photograph, because it was for the paper or something like that, and I think it was a touch. So I didn't really get to see too many of her lines.
The intimacy.
Yeah.
Well, you have captured a personality and attitude beautifully. And your composition is #1. It's excellent. The goat should have been doing what Grandma's doing. It's really, really, really quite wonderful. There's nothing to improve on. This is a little strange in here, the jowl. It doesn't look like it matches that. So you have to define, is their neck coming in here a little more, not hard line, but a soft delineation to allow this, because she almost got short tobacco in the side. It's pulling
And you
pulling
probably
down.
can't see that in the photograph, but we know it's there. Just a little darkness,
Right.
a value where that would be.
And then her pearls. She wouldn't have put a white string around her neck. Indicate very subtly the beauty of the pearls, because you did it on her earring. And you've kind of left that alone, but just a little touch, 1, 2, 3, slightly barely rendered, would make it more intimate and create the warmth that she's exuding. Her hat fits her well. Her attitude is fine. And she just needs to get that jaw looked at by the surgeon and the jewelry person, Rocky.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and I love that stuff. I would like to see more color in her face. But, you know, that's just me. I like color. So, and you won't know it when you see the painting downstairs. But I love color, and I would love to see some purples and some Prussian blues and some greens in her face. But that's me, and I probably, and I'll tell you what, because I started out doing portraiture, and I failed at it miserably. Okay, and we have a portrait artist in our group over here. Well, she ran the portrait group in Raleigh for 28 years or something, but often when we do portraiture, it looks beautiful when you're up close and you're thinking, oh wow, I got that shadow just perfectly, and I've got this little crease, you know. But you stand back and it looks flat. So you almost have to accentuate the color a little bit. I mean, that would be my only comment.
I don't do it very often, but I just had such a feel.
Oh yeah,
Very nice.
it's lovely.
It's a lovely balance because it's ethereal too, and it's more like a memory.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then the only other thing that I would probably do, because it is a portrait, you know, what if you cut it just a little bit?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm off kilter here, but I probably would have the more space on here because you don't want her looking off the page. But if you pulled this even over next to her hat.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Her shoulder, something leaving the painting.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
yeah,
and you could or could not do that. I don't, you know, it's up to you because it's your painting. But
something strikes me about it with her composition the way it is. I'm not.
yeah, it does.
Because what you said, I'm not. But a traditional portrait is cropped the way Rocky just showed. This somehow, and it came from your subjectivity.
Yeah.
And from your emotional state. This is a life.
It is a life, yeah.
A
exactly.
life and memories and ghosts floating around in here. It seems to be a window with the curtains with the old, they're not crocheted, but I know what you're talking about. My grandmother had them, my mother had them, and then we threw them all out. But there's a feeling that there are memories lingering behind
To me, it
there,
looks
and the
like
whole thing
buildings.
has this ethereal feeling.
Yeah.
You used a lot of discipline to hold your mood together in this, and that's highly commendable.
Yeah, and that actually makes me want to get closer to the painting and look at it more, and I start that conversation with the piece,
You know, the line,
which
the
holds my
indication.
attention longer because, like I said, it looks to me like buildings. So I wanted to get closer, take a look at it, and see what it
I
was.
like how that.
And you also did a very good job of lost and found edges with the woman's hat and up in the skin tones up in here. And you know, so it doesn't, it's not too rigid or static. It kind of moves me throughout the piece.
And you were pointing out this line, and it works.
Yeah, like that.
Now, when I'm doing that personally, I like to put some architectural point in there, and it usually leads right to the eye. Just because if I'm trying to quietly force the viewer to look into the soul of the person, there's the arrow that leads you right there. But this is placed nicely, and a really good job.
Thank you, thank you.
It's very nice.
You do get carried away with, you know, with who it is.
Well, we love our grandmothers. You know?
Hopefully too.
Okay, you have one more. Anybody else new and fresh?
This is
Jan
a half
has
sheet
another one.
painting, that's just an artist's proof, and it's all I had.
That way?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I know what they are. They're prickle pear cactus
We can rip
flowers.
Jeff's in a few minutes.
You what?
We can rip yours in a few minutes.
Okay. Good job. Really, nothing to criticize. You could, you're flirting with this here. Just a pinch more intensity of the orange. Again, to get them to pull forward even more. But this is a lovely, love the greens. I'll do my Ryan thing. And the plane changes on the angles of the cactus. Really good. I would almost tone down a few of, especially the ones in shadow of the spikes. just because they're all very white. I know you worked hard to preserve those. But the logic says to get, again, play subtly with a little more depth by toning some of the ones in deep shadows down, tinting them down a bit.
Compositionally, you did a fantastic job. Without this lighter yellow up here, I think you'd lose the whole piece. But the fact that you kept this up here makes my eye go this direction. I'll step back, sorry about that. But yeah, I think if this was gone, your eye would just stop right in the center there. So I think you did a very good job there. Yeah, I wish I could see it large too. It's so nice.
It is a big painting.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's a big painting.
It is. I'm sorry, all my work is trapped at an art show in Wilmington. They moved it forward because of the flooding, and they
that-
already had it.
And that's a
they
good
didn't
thing when that
release it to
happens
us.
though, so.
Don't
But
you
no,
love
it is very
excuses?
nice.
It's like, but everybody's
Sorry.
got one.
You know,
Sorry.
do you enter these in shows, you enter florals in shows?
I have not.
You know, florals are hard, I think, to get into shows because jurors have seen so many of them. And, you know, it has to be something different. It has to be very, very well done. Otherwise, you know, it just doesn't get in. But I think this one, this is a very nice painting. I think you did a very good
I'll
job.
enter it in something and see what happens.
You never know. Perhaps maybe just a little bit darker dark down here, just make it pop a little bit more. You know, certainly, I don't know if that'd improve it, or you could always look at, you know, if you have Photoshop. Sometimes I'll do that in Photoshop. I'll take a photograph of my painting after it's done. I think, does it need anything else? I can tweak it a little bit on Photoshop before actually going in and ruining the piece, which I'm sure we've all done a few times. Or so, but it may or may not need that, possibly. Suggestion.
Thank you.
Okay, I only wanted to know, did you put shadows from your cactus spikes?
Yes,
Okay, I can't see them from a
I
distance.
thought I did.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
You know, I lived 20 years in the cactus country, and one of the most dramatic things about cactus is seeing the shadow from the spikes. And because of those shadows, you can see the contour of the cactus leaves, I guess, whatever. And you can see even if you had a little spiky shadow coming across a couple of flowers, it's pretty exciting. To me, that's, you know, I see that, yeah, okay, fine.
Thank you.
But I agree with everybody else. I think compositionally, you know, to me it holds, I would like to see this in more color, but that's just me. But I think compositionally it holds all four ways, so we should ask the expert, but it's really pretty. And I'd love to see it this big.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, who has it? Jan has another one. Would you like me to hold it?
Yeah.
Get rid of the, yeah, there we go.
Pete Zenneber on her 97th birthday. There were multiple light sources, and I know I have to choose, I have to fix the shadows on her shirt, but just
Okay.
it have.
All right, come on, guys.
Well, she's standing out more. I mean, she's standing out well. Again, the background and the foreground are, this and the background, her blouse and the background are the same value. So you can do two things when you're doing a vague background or just, you know, filling space. You can put a geometric form in there somehow and create a plane, or in this case, you can. Where's her light coming from?
About 5 different places, that's why I've got to choose.
Okay, but you,
Already,
for the final painting, I know. For the final painting, you have to determine, okay, what's the
Yes.
most dominant light
Yes.
source? Okay, so then you will, if it's this way, you're going to darken some areas here. In this case, this is so white, her hair, whoops, her hair is so white, I would kind of do it that way.
Okay.
And this way it enables you to get this darker and fade off. Or the oil painter solution is you do the corners darker and taper in so there's a halo of light around the face.
Mm-hmm.
But with watercolor, the thing is you need to isolate her from the background. They're the same value.
Mhm.
So something's got to give. You don't have to do the whole thing, but enough to bring her out of melting into the background and into the foreground.
You could lightly vignette the corners to kind of give it that pop towards the center. And I'll do that sometimes for a painting. I think if it needs it, I'll just put a lot of water down first and just a little bit of dark color, let it spread out. It's kind of nerve-wracking, especially if you've spent hours on a painting, but it does help sometimes. That's an old Ansel Adams trick he used to do for photography.
Say, in the corners?
Yeah, and all the four corners. You darken the four corners, and Ansel Adams used to do that for all his photographs, and it does kind of give the center of attention a little bit more.
Now, your composition has a flair for the dramatic, so that's highly commendable. I see the consistency with the other painting. Play that up, but it's your color values that you need to concentrate on and push and pull more.
Thank you.
Dr. Doolittle.
All right,
Anyone else?
wanna do your
Anything
other
else?
one?
got another one?
Okay.
Are we missing, did you bring,
I just brought one.
okay. Anybody else? Okay.
So that's got the smaller one here.
Do you want me to hold it?
I got it.
Okay, you got it. Aww.
Nice use of salt in the background.
This is like painting a bunny and a kitty cat.
You know, I'm an
You know,
animal
it's-
person,
it's-
so
Yeah, yeah.
that's mostly what I paint.
It might be better if you took it out of the cover because it's.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Lights really reflect, you know.
Yeah, right.
And seal it in the back, not in the
Yeah.
front.
Yeah.
She was driving.
And
in
making
green.
so many windows.
Oh, yeah, that's much better.
I would love to have seen the light in back of the bill and the darks in back of the tail. That just,
Yeah.
just me. And I'm thinking from a distance, there's not a whole lot of definition right there. And it's funny how you don't see it until you get away from it. Again, with St.
I saw it when I picked it up to bring it. I went, I gotta lighten up around the eyes, do something, because
The sparkle.
that
Okay.
needs to be, you need to be drawn toward the eye.
Well, what's happening is it's bloodless. So if you took a dot, a teeny tiny, tiny dot of cadmium red,
Okay.
and you put it a little on the underside of the eye, that brown's going to jump into the eye. You're going to give life to the bird and warmth, like
Okay.
boom. And then a little bit of a yellow-orange at the top of the beak, because this is dead black. Number one, don't use black right out of the tube. It's always black and. It's lamp black and, or it's ivory black and. Always modify it with something else, because it brings harmony to the painting. Otherwise, it's a dead, flat color. It has no depth. Even though black is supposed to be the darkest thing, it'll be darker if it's purple black or blue black, or a warm black. So that's why I'm saying put a little warmth up at the beak, just a little haze of a yellow-orange, right where the feathers, maybe he ate mustard. He had a hot dog and got some mustard on him, but because the beak is isolated from there. And then the other solution would be to tint this branch down with some color so that the beak stands away. It's divided into three with your color. I would add a little bit of the blue, not in the same proportion, but a little bit of the blue to that side. It's hard to add the yellow to this side. But somehow he's going from a daybird to a nightbird. And if it's atmosphere, then to create the balance, you want to bring it back. Now, one other thing, because you've rendered your feathers beautifully and the composition's good, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not talking about the good things because you want to focus on Okay, so enough with the Oreo cookies. He needs a little more depth. Again, he's a rounded object, so the 5 points of light, a highlight wherever the highlight is, the transition, the pure color of the real light, and then the shadow. I'm just getting the levels of feathers, but I'm not getting the brownness of the bird. So under the wing, a cooler brown. Say take your umber and a little bit of violet to it. It'll be a little aubergine, but it'll start turning him. Or you could put a thin wash of blue and then a little more brown over that. And here too, a little bit, you want a colder blue, so at the coldest part, a little blue violet in here, and it'll give the depth. And coming out from under the tail. And this way, he's a nice representation, but you want to give it the life and mold it and see the dimensionality of it.
And I always think reflected color, like if the sky is green up here, you should have just a little bit of that green perhaps reflected into here, you know, down into here, because that color is going to be bouncing up off of the trees and everything. You might not see it in the photograph, but when you see it in the painting, it makes sense. Yeah. And then it kind of integrates the color within the bird also. It's
bringing the bird into the environment and you're reacting to each other.
And where's the light source? Where's your arrow? Okay. I don't see.
Because right now it's.
Yeah, it's coming up from the bottom.
Or it's coming from over here, because that's like the lighter sky area.
Yeah, and a lot of times birds are very shiny. Their feathers are very shiny in the sun, and so maybe just a way to solve that, which is cheating, and you can't probably do it in our shows, but you could use liquid acrylic just to put that tiny bit of highlight on. And I'm a bad person, and I don't do it, but sometimes, because I would have masked it first, but sometimes just a little highlight, or wash it out, scrub it out. Yeah. Careful.
Magic eraser.
Magic eraser works beautifully. And tape it, and then cut your little spaces out so that you don't wash out the whole thing. Just
the little electric thing?
No.
Excuse me, the square one?
No, Mr. Clean.
Mr. Clean, like the magic eraser you buy at the hardware store.
The original.
Yes.
It's the scrub pad for walls.
If you put tape down,
get the original,
make sure you rub the tape really hard so water doesn't get underneath it, and take a magic eraser and you can get back to the white of the paper.
Oh, really?
Yeah, don't pound, because you don't want to disturb the skin of the paper.
Yeah, but you basically it's a micro eraser, so you're basically just erasing the color off, so you can't really go back with paint over it very easily.
Not very well.
You can if you really screw up, but.
And then the other option is a razor blade.
Yeah.
Carefully.
Yeah, I don't like that.
But the best option of all is plan ahead.
Yes. Yeah. But it's pretty.
When you look at a painting that you're going to do, and in your mind's eye, you want to. What's your number one priority? Preserve the lights.
Yes. Yeah.
So draw them, mark them, and stay away from them. Go right up to them and work away from it so that they're there, and then if you need to blend them in, that's the last thing you do.
I've got to get better at doing that when I'm using a photograph, because I don't have anything to take a photograph of a bird that close. I've tried, I'm not good at it, my camera's not good enough, but so I've gone to Morgfile and places like that where you can use them. But I've got to be better at creating my own lights, because that photograph, I liked it, but it was kind of just dulled down, and I didn't do a good job at all, even though I was thinking about it and trying to do it, of finding those lights and making those highlights and making the darks. Well, that's one of the things I've got to really work on.
And that's why converting to black and white and jacking up the contrast kind of gives you a better idea of where you want your darks and your values to come from. And it just kind of gives, and also, paint upside down. Just give it a different shot and see.
It's a woodpecker.
It's an upside down woodpecker. What's he doing there?
Mechanically, there's another little gizmo you can use, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with erasing shields. A lot of guys use them with drafting. Having had 30 years of mechanical drafting, erasing shield is a fabulous little tool because it's very thin, and it has lots of little slots of different spaces and different shapes and round, circle, square little things. And you can lay it on and use your magic eraser with that if it's not too wet.
Oh, it's more selective, yes.
And it's perfectly selective.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can get some really nice lifted out spaces with that.
Tip of the day.
Yeah, tip of the day. But really, your bird's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's an eastern bluebird.
Oh, it's not gonna like rain.
Yeah, and they're protected.
And it's hard to not want to start doing every little detail and
Yeah.
every little feather, and then you just go crazy.
You get
'cause you-
overworked
Yeah.
so fast.
It's really funny to listen to everybody who's had paintings, but how a lot of the paintings, I think to me, the consensus might be that you gotta plan very well first. You know, plan your picture, do your value studies, do your little sketches, put your color down so that you know where you're going with your color.
The only thing left to chance is the behavior of the medium.
There you go.
And with time and experience, I mean, practice, you can control it.
But we all love control, don't we?
Yeah, that's the only place in my life that I get control over my paintings.
Thank you.
Otherwise, I'm married and gave that up a long time ago.
All righty. Anybody else? Okay, now we get to critique the critiquer.
The critiker.
Let's do this so that it's on. Let me do this. So it's on
My dad used to say many hours ago, we had all that rain. And rain and rain and rain. And then we had about 3 hours of sunshine. So I went out and I just taught a workshop and I'm teaching another one of French watercolor, which is wetting the paper, sketching very loosely with pen and ink, in this case sepia, and then bringing watercolor to it. You either dampen it again and do wet on wet, and then wet on damp, and then wet on dry for your final rendering. So I did this, I did most of the tree for about an hour plein air, and the scene. The water, what attracted my eye is I have to pass this water every day, and during all that rain, it crossed the road. So you have to slow down. It wasn't that deep, but enough. And because there's water on either side and they come to meet. So there's this tree out there with more water and it just caught my eye. And I said, okay, I'm doing that darn tree. So I pulled my car over and I did this because I had stuff with me and boom, boom, boom. Then I went home and brought up my colors more and did the water and then laid the sky in. So there it was. So it was about a 3-hour total. Anyway. But I had planned it, and it's simple enough because it's myopic. It's a single focal point, so there's symmetry. In order to do the class, I had to show people online what I was going to do. So this, and you're not going to believe it, this 20 minutes. And again, the sepia ink, and it's just sketching the shapes, and then it bleeds, and then the thing about it is if you blot right away, if it starts dripping down, because you can see a few drips, you can get most of it up just by blotting.
Sepia?
So it's uncontrollable and controllable. But I just spritzed the paper. I did it in sections. I didn't wet the whole thing down. But I spritzed and then sketched and then started. I used the green ink and the sepia and something else. And then you just go back and pick and pull and pick and pull and pick and pull.
Is all of it ink?
Hmm?
Is all of it ink?
No, watercolor and ink. Well, it's French watercolor, but you can use ink with it. They're water soluble too.
What brand are they? What brand?
Whatever it said. I just got some Dalarowny at Jerry's, so I'm going to try it because I needed a good green because these are neon hellacious. They just, they're green in the bottle, but you put them on and they turn crazy. So in that same venue, I have to be, this was the demo I did in the actual class. So you can see more of that effect of the ink on the wet paper. And again, this is a simple form. You can see where it bled and ran and all that. But the idea is to bring down the focus to the details so that you get the flavor and the rest could fleet away.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeff.
I'm going to pass this around so you can.
Okay, you were going to tell us how you critique your own pictures. That, I think that we'd all.
I did.
Oh.
You get up and you walk away and you go have a cigarette.
Oh.
Or whatever your vice is. And then you come back and you look at it from a distance, and then you get away from it. You take it into a different light situation. Take it outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
Turn it upside down. Take it to a mirror. It'll tell you all these messages, because as I mentioned earlier, for those that came later, you have a right or left eye dominance. So you're used to seeing this way. When I discovered that, I was a kid. My father would go to the mirror and be shaving, and I didn't recognize him. I said, you're all lopsided, you know. It's because we see things one way, so you have to force yourself to look at things a different way. I got your message. You're not winking at me. And the other thing is to squint at it, to blur it out so that you see big forms and messages coming out. And throw it out of focus. If you don't know how to throw it out of focus, I have to analyze how to do it. You cross your eyes and close one. Cross your eyes and close one. You'll throw it out of focus.
I just squint because I'm like, oh.
Or you could be really nearsighted.
Or be really nearsighted, or put Vaseline
Or
over
take
your
your
nose.
glasses off with your forehead.
No, it's nearsighted too.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and then you've got to be brutal. You've got to step out of your own body and psyche and come up as a stranger and say, oh, what's wrong with this? You have to take your emotions, because that's what's the driving force behind your painting, and you have to put them aside. And you balance again. This is like review. Subjectivity versus objectivity. So all the creative freedom and emotions is the subjectivity end, but you've got to harness it with the objectivity. You've got to communicate what people are familiar with and will understand. It can't all be you out of your head. Although that's fine.
For me, sometimes that takes weeks. I just have to put the thing aside for a couple weeks, upside down, so I just don't see it at all. And then I'll go back to it later and look at it and say, oh, this is just a complete disaster. I'm just going to paint on the other side. Or say, I may be able to save this.
But you need to come back, as Ryan said, with a fresh eye. So go. And then if you're doing a long, involved painting where you need consistency and continuity, okay. And it's spread out over time. But we have mood swings. So what you go back, and you have the same food you ate, or the same cup of coffee or tea, and the Lorna-Doone, and put on the same music. So you get into that same modus operandi, and you'll have consistency. Mm-hmm. This is when you're doing something very elaborate, complicated, where it all needs to tie together. So you have to control your approach to things and not throw yourself against the wall, and if you stick, you stick. If not, you slide down.
And there's another little anecdote, I think. We had a show in Cary many years ago, and I got to walk around with the judge and write down everything, I'm going to say he said, so that we could give comments to all the artists. And the judge, there were two paintings kind of against the wall, you know, because he then had to eliminate some because it was bring your own, we didn't have digital then. And there were two paintings next to each other, and one was a cotton field, like, you know, what you were talking about that. And there was a barn scene, and they were both by the same artist, but you would have no idea that they were by the same artist. And the judge chose the cotton field. Oh, this is awesome, put it in. And a little bit later, when we were hanging the show and he had to walk around and give the awards, he came up to this cotton field and he said, who the hell juried this in? Different mentality. Wow. Mm-hmm. Different attitude, a different day, it was sunny, you know, and I think most of us realize that judges work so hard, jurors work so hard when they're viewing hundreds of paintings, right? And they see things in a painting that immediately grabs them. And then, you know, sometimes a little bit later, maybe it doesn't, or maybe they see something different. So I think that we all need to remember that, you know, if it doesn't get in one show, maybe it'll get in another one. And don't be embarrassed about your pictures. You've worked so hard for them. And like Jeff says, learn from it, you know, check it out in different views. So, I mean, I just.
All the rejections get you closer to the victory.
That's right.
And no, it's true. And you never take it personally because you can't. You can't.
You just get upset. You just get upset and paint more. That's what I do. I'm like, well,
Right.
I'm gonna get in with this juror next year. I'm just gonna paint something different.
I got into the American 2 years back to back, and then 7 years, and then I got finally in. I got my signature, and now since then they don't know me. So we'll see if they know me this year.
Does anybody have any questions? Did we embarrass you? Are we okay? You're all still our friends?
Yes.
Did we help you?
Yes, it was excellent.
Well, there's some coffee and refreshments.
What time is it? Are we?
Yes, please.
Please.
This is our juror, Linda Baker.
We just decided a few minutes ago when I was over selecting awards for the show, that the Tuesday night program that I'm going to do, I was going to do just a demo, and now I'm going to do a short demo, and then I'm going to walk around the show and talk about why I picked awards and why I didn't pick awards, and
wonderful.
You know, so similar to what you've just seen here, only with what has made the cut out of all these hundreds of paintings. So anyway, I would invite all of you to come and be a part of it if you'd like.
That's great.
That is
Tuesday.
a wonderful thing. We have enjoyed that in past shows, and we've only had a couple that actually did that, and Dean Mitchell was one of them. And it was wonderful to hear what the judge, what captured them and what, you know.
Is that going to be videoed?
Could it be
Oh,
videoed?
could that be videoed?
And put online?
I will be there Tuesday.
Oh. Well, maybe we can get somebody.
But even if somebody was able to take their iPhone and
yes.
just video and put it up on the website or something, that would
Awesome.
be fabulous.
Yeah, because I mean, I could do video with my camera, but I've got a Mark III. It would be 500 gigs.
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's.
The juror that seemed to have changed his mind.
Yes.
I don't think, as a juror, I really ever change my mind. So, you know, moods are a part of it. But if I like a painting, I like a painting. Why I might change my mind is because maybe I run into one I like better. So I will say, oh, this is a great painting, I'm gonna put this in the show. But then I'm only allowed to pick this many, and I liked this many more than I like this one. So even though I like that one very much, it didn't make the cut.
Well, thank
So you have the ladies in waiting.
I have the ladies in waiting, yeah. And you know, when I jury, I pick the absolutes and the absolutely no's, and then everything else ends up in that maybe bin, which is really tough. The ends are, the really high ends are just in. But then you've got this whole range, and you're looking this against this, this against this, this against this, you know.
And do you curate a show as well? Is that how you kind of think about it with the middle group?
I do. And for me, I don't know that every juror does this, but I try for a balanced show, so I try for a little bit of non-objective, a little bit of figurative, a little bit of landscape, perhaps a floral, some cutting edge, some conceptual. So I like to give, I like things to be a balance. And so that might be, you know, you might be a beautiful painting in the maybe bin, but I want to pick something conceptual, and you were just a pretty painting. So there is that whole thing of a pretty painting versus something that would get some attention for a reason.
Thank you for that. That's
Yeah, because you have to realize, as Linda said, each show is informative. It's the sum total of its parts. It's a presentation to the public of what's out there, and it's not myopic and one-sided and opinionated. It is a mesh.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you,
And
everybody.
thank you, Linda, for being here.